All right, and we are finally live, my creative friends. Happy to be live, making sure that's showing up on YouTube. It's been a morning of not being able to get our microphone to work, but here I am. Welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I'm Dr. Minette Riordan, coming to you from chilly and cold Loveland, Colorado today. And this month we are working on, just getting my camera shifted around a little bit here. This month we are working on an end of year reflections journal, and what you're seeing in front of me is not a journal. And as I was thinking this morning about what I wanted to do, I wanted to play with some watercolors, and I have too many things on my table, so I'm just moving things around, getting settled. Tech stuff always, throws things off, so I apologize for being late this morning. So I had this idea that I was going to put some watercolor grounds, which is a really cool product, which I put somewhere. Here it is. I was going to show you. So this is Daniel Smith watercolor grounds. You can paint this on just about any surface, and it will turn that surface into a surface that's great for painting watercolor on. So it's kind of a fun tool and supply to use. But when I read the instructions, it said that that page is supposed to dry and cure for at least 24 hours. So I'll probably come back a different day, and all of a sudden my camera's upside down. There we go. That's better. Get that camera going right. Everything got changed when we had to do that hard reboot. So good morning. It is December 20th. We are working in an end of year reflections journal. So I've been answering all different kinds of questions. What was life like for me? What am I celebrating? What am I carrying forward into the new year? And you can actually find a link to all 22 of my favorite end of year reflection prompts in the description section of this video or any of the other videos. And I showed how to make the journal, and I've just been working live through this book over the last few weeks. I love that silly face that appeared. Worked on just something more complex, and then sometimes it's just the simplest of pages. I did this one this morning, and this was about unmet needs. What are the things that I'm longing for that haven't yet appeared that I want to think about bringing more in? And I'm just loving playing with, this was a Stabilo Marxall pencil and some Daler Rowney acrylic ink and water. And I love the simplicity of that. Yesterday, I was all about peace. And the question was, what am I open or hoping to expand and clarify? And so there was reflection back, reflection forward. And I love this dove really reflected on what I'm looking to expand and clarify is just bringing more peace and calm into my life. And so I ended up adding a little bit of pocket here and a little note to myself about answering the question. I love pockets and things tucked into the journal. And so that's where we have been so far. I love it when books start to get really chunky and full. And I thought I was going to play on these pages with some watercolor. And then I thought, how can I get creative? I want to play with watercolor. This paper is kind of just thin paper. What can I do? And since I love creating things that I can just simply attach into my journal, that what if I created maybe some unfolding pages for going ahead. And so if you're joining me live, welcome. I'm delighted that you're here. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much. Equally delighted to have you here. I am live most mornings at 7 a.m. I've changed that time up a little bit from 6:30 to 7 a.m. to give myself just a little bit more of my own creative playtime in the mornings. And let me get these all on that rough side there. So the question for today was, what are the most common emotions? What are the most common emotions? And I'm going to type that in the chat. What were common, and I don't know if these are the exact words, but it's something about this. What were common emotions that I felt this year? And it definitely feels like it was an emotional roller coaster of a year. Where I started this journey was talking about things being really feeling topsy-turvy. And so diving a little bit deeper into some of those feelings, and I was thinking about, there was a lot of curiosity. We moved cross country this year. There was a lot of grief from things happening in the family, and moving always stirs up a lot of grief for me. There was also a lot of delight and joy and awe and wonder at exploring this new place. There was a lot of doubt and fear. So there was a big contrast of emotions, but I often think of emotions as blooming. And look, I could make, oh, look, shadow animals. So I'm wondering maybe if we turn this light on, we get a little bit less shadow this morning. These lights seem to create shadows differently every morning, but this is live in my studio. And again, this is Painting in Your PJs with Dr. Minette, and we are here to talk about all things life, love, and art. I spend a lot of time in my studio in solitude, making art as a personal development, personal growth, and spiritual tool as well. And I am passionate about helping others to connect to their own unique, authentic, creative voice, and to share that voice with the world in the way that feels most meaningful, fulfilling, and aligned with their purpose, or their purposes, as Eric Maisel says, that we don't just have one. So this morning when I thought about these blooming emotions, the thing that came to me was watercolor play. And there is something really magical about playing with watercolors. And so I'm just going to start with, so I was painting with some black ink this morning, so my water maybe isn't as clean. So I'm going to come in here, but now you'll be able to see those circles. And I'm going to come in here with just some watercolor circles and some abstract watercolor play. And I'm going to go across these pages to the best of my ability. And I'm just going to get some color on the page. It'll be interesting seeing how these colors kind of end up mixing with this little bit of dirty water, but I love that you can see those circles on there. And I'm playing, I don't play with these very often, but they're super fun. These are Ecoline liquid watercolors. Ecoline liquid watercolors. And I'm just going to start putting them down. And this is just some inexpensive watercolor paper, Canson watercolor paper. Look at those gorgeous blooms. Love how these colors bloom. And so again, I'm just going to let these colors play on the page. This to me is so fascinating. I could just sit and watch this happen all day long. Love the different things that they do. Still staying relatively in these primary colors that I've been really drawn to working with. It's rare that I tend to sort of dive into just playing with primaries. And so that pink in here is really acting as my red here. So my water's drying up a little bit, so those aren't blooming quite as much. So I'm just going to come in and I'm not even using a watercolor brush. I've just got this big brush here. I want some of that blue to kind of spill over here, and maybe we'll get these to move around. Those circles didn't end up being very round, but that's okay. So I'm just going to play and move some of this color. When I think about emotions, I think about bubbles, right? I think about how they're just this sort of, they can tend to just sort of float away, float by, but they can also feel completely overwhelming at times. So it's really hard to always know what we're feeling or name what we're feeling. And with my friend Andrea Chebelou, we have a program called The Creative Stretch, and we've been, this one's ending up looking a little like a brain. We have interviewed 12 artists about 36 different emotions that were inspired by Brene Brown's book, I'm going to stick with these primaries. I'm just looking at my colors here, figuring out where I'm going next. Her beautiful book, Atlas of the Heart, and you can listen to those interviews for free on our school at creativestretch.teachable.com, creativestretch.teachable.com. And it's been an amazing year of just exploring these different interviews. Look at how that just blooms out. Isn't that the most amazing thing? It just never ceases to amaze me where these colors go. And I love it when they touch each other. And what happens if I just put that watercolor right onto the page and kind of let it bloom, or if I pull that one out a little bit, just letting these colors sort of mix and blend on the page. And again, this is how emotions feel, right? They sort of bloom, they expand. We can't really control them, which is how I feel a lot of times about watercolor play, is that we don't have a lot of control over the watercolor. It tends to do its own thing quite a bit. So good morning. If you're here joining me live, please do say hello in the chat, or if you're watching the replay, let me know that you stopped by. I love hearing from you. So we're getting ready for some really, look, I ended up with these kind of bubbles going all these different directions, which really wasn't necessarily what I was going for. But when I start to pull these apart and work on them individually, then I won't have them all in a row like that. So one of the things that so this is my first winter in Colorado. I lost my train of thought, so I'm like, okay, where was I going for this? So I'm going to come in and just have some fun adding some watercolor doodles in here and letting those colors sort of run around the page. This is my first winter in Colorado, and we are expecting a crazy winter storm coming in starting, let's just do some splatters on there. Look how fun that is. Crazy winter storm coming in tomorrow. So that will be very interesting. It's going to be like minus 16 or something just bonkers and crazy. Get a little more color going here. And so we're trying to get shopping done today and get ready to be socked in for a couple of days, and then hoping it's going to be all kind of settled down and cleared up before the Christmas holidays, so we can get up into the mountains to see my mom, and just trusting that everything's going to work out. And I think when it comes to emotions, trust is definitely one of those emotions. Good morning, Blanca. Thanks for being here with me, for being patient with those crazy technical difficulties. Could not get my microphone to work this morning, so I'm just letting that watercolor run. And I'm thinking, I left my paper towels on the other side of the room, so let's just grab a rag here to catch that, and maybe just, I'm gonna let that watercolor just dance across the page. And isn't this how emotions feel? So this is what I mean by, I've been talking a lot about working intuitively with our art materials and letting them oftentimes do the speaking for us, right? That sometimes, rather than trying to figure it all out, if we can go to the page and allow the materials to just kind of do their thing, we end up having this sort of deeper understanding and connection to what it is that we're feeling in the moment. And it's been a year, like I said, of just sort of a lot of introspection, a lot of movement, a lot of doubt about, you know, every time we move, we're like, oh, did we actually make the right decision when we moved? There's been a lot of grief and family intensity, which just happens in families, right? Which happens in families. And there's been so much fun, exploration, awe, and wonder. And I think if there was a lesson that I learned in a lot of this year, it was surrender. right? I had to really learn to surrender and to just manage my own expectations, manage my own expectations. That's been a huge lesson for me this year. So once these are dry and complete, I will be making a little accordion fold out of them and then adding them to my end of year reflection journal, which is a really fun way to just sort of expand and grow our journal. Just loving how all these colors kind of play together, letting them blend and play. And there's something so freeing and relaxing about just playing this way. And I really have to thank my friend Andrea Shebelu for just showing me that watercolors can be fun and easy and not have to be intimidating. I was definitely one of those people that when I was in grad school, I think for doing my master's, I thought, oh, I want to get back into my art. And so I signed up for a local community watercolor class that was supposed to be for beginners. It was a florals class, and it was way too advanced and hard. And I gave up and I didn't touch watercolors again for probably over 20 years. And also Whitney Freya is another one that really helped me learn to free up my style and just explore playing with watercolors and paints in different ways. Just using the color that's on my brush here. And again, emotions bloom, they grow, they can also feel very tight and constrained. And the more that we can just sort of tune in and listen and pay attention, sometimes I could just sit and make marks on these all day long. There has been beautiful sunshine and joy and delight in my life this year. So again, it's easy also sometimes to really dwell on what didn't work and what didn't happen. And so if we can just really pause for a moment and think about what went right this year, like where were the times when everything felt wonderful and fantastic. Moving into our house was a beautiful, amazing thing, and moving is never easy. But at the end of the day, we are in an absolutely beautiful home that we love, in a beautiful neighborhood that we are in, continuing to enjoy exploring. We moved in here in May, so I'm just going to spray this with a little water. Getting some nice speckles happening and things flowing. So look, let me bring that up closer so you can really see those, just spraying that little bit of water. I got all that texture and things starting to flow. Oh, and I even got some on this one here. So these are so much fun to create. And once they're dry, I love to come back in with a black micron and add some Zen Tangle patterns. Surrender is a main word for you too this year, right? Like it's just, there is a divine plan, and so often I want to be in charge. And so surrender and realizing that I'm not in control of much of anything, and there's so much that I can't control, has been a big lesson. But if I really sit down and take stock of what's happened this year, it's been a full year, but it's been a fruitful year. I've had amazing, really wonderful clients all year long. Taught some wonderful programs where I learned so much. Mix some more pink in here and see what happens. Again, I can just sit here and play all day long. In fact, even before I got on the call this morning, I was playing in other journals with my alcohol inks and There's nothing like watercolor to teach us to let go of control, to teach us to let go of control. Let's see, is that too? Nope, that's actually good. Playing with all those different lights. And again, if you're joining me live, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Would love for you to just pop in and say hello. If you're watching the replay, let me know you stopped by to join me for some fun watercolor play this morning. This will probably be a little bit shorter session because these definitely have to dry. Either that or I'll hit them with a dryer and see where we get going. And nothing like starting the morning with technical problems and having to get my sweet hubby down here to figure out what's going on before he'd even had his first cup of coffee. So thank you so much to Brad for always having my back in every which way, but definitely in tech. I know it's not his favorite thing to get down here first thing in the morning and problem solve. Just feeling that sort of that blooming, right? That blooming feeling of emotions are crazy and wild. They're up and down. They're inside out. They're contradictory often at the same time, right? And I think one of the lessons about managing emotions that's so good to learn is to really understand that we can hold two emotions at the same time. So just because we're sad doesn't mean we can't also experience awe and wonder. That just because we're stressed doesn't mean that we can't go on and have a great day and move through the world. So noticing how emotions really tend to take over and noticing what emotions that we allow to kind of take over and run us can be really helpful as well. All right, so these are coming along. They're super, super fun. And again, if you haven't signed up to watch the free videos at on the Creative Stretch, where we're talking about 36 emotions with 12 artists inspired by Brené Brown, her beautiful book, Atlas of the Heart, which is all about mapping the language of human experience. And so we're talking about emotions and feelings and sometimes just situations that aren't necessarily emotions, but that have such a big impact on the human experience. Okay, and these are feeling really groovy. Let me take this little tiny brush in here and see what happens if I just come in and move some of that color around. All of a sudden my colors have blended over here and I have just this yummy, beautiful purple happening. So I'm going to move that maybe around the page. And again, I love how art just becomes a metaphor for life and how things can blend and get mixed up. And we learn from the blending, not from the separation. And we definitely learn from surrendering. We definitely learn from surrendering. I'm happy to have my daughter home and to be doing some holiday planning and shopping, and we're going to be probably kind of snowed in here for a couple of days, and so we've gotten all kinds of stuff to do some baking, and she's going to make a gingerbread house, which is one of her favorite things to do every year. So we're looking forward to some wintry, chilly fun. Okay, and there's that part of me that just wants to keep going on these. And again, I'm thinking about how sometimes those emotions that feel so common, we just hold on to them for too long. And actually, if we just, or we push them down and we create a lot of chaos. And really, if we just allow ourselves to feel all of our emotions, we can have more clarity and move through things and learn from the experience. So these are so much fun, and they definitely need to get dry. So I'm trying to decide. I have more watercolor paper. I'm like, do I make more? Do I focus on these four? And I'm kind of digging where these are going. So I'm going to mute myself for just a second and see if I can get these dry. So if you're here joining me live, thank you. So happy to have you here live, popping in for some watercolor play this morning. Please do stop by in the chat and say hello. And I'm going to mute myself for just a minute here. All right, these little guys are definitely going to take some time to dry, and I'm not sure I want to rush them, but I got this one nice and dry. And a place that I love to go next is to come in just with a black pen and maybe just start to make some little marks in there. So even though all of this started off just being really about noticing how I was feeling, letting the watercolors be the expression of that. Now I'm going to come in and just have some fun and be in some deep play in these. See if I can lower my camera just a little bit. Bear with me for 1 second. Again, this is why this is live. You get all this action going, right? Just live. There we go. Come in a little bit closer. And I'm just having some fun. Oops, so see, it was still wet there, so you want to be really careful. If it's wet at all, it will definitely damage your nice pen, so be really careful. Make sure it gets really dry. But I love just starting to come in and add some of the patterns in these places. And I'm seeing and noticing all these little nooks and crannies of spaces in between, and it's almost like in the maelstrom of these emotions, there's still breathing space, and there's color, and there's light. And I love how these lines sort of create their own kind of string to come in and add Zentangle patterns. I love adding Zentangle patterns to just about anything and everything. And I love Mooka, Mooka. It's one of my absolute most favorite Zentangle patterns. Love the way it grows and can be wild and crazy. Just like my kitty who just did a drive-by, and she took one look at me and went, gallivanting off in a different direction. Apparently it's playtime this morning. And I think one of the best ways to create calm, to manage our emotions, is to come to the page, whether we're writing, drawing, painting, tingling. But there's something about just that slow, mindful exploration of emotions on the page that can be so healing. And this is one of those projects where I have started on all 4 of these cards with the watercolors. And I'll probably spend a couple of days adding marks and patterns to some of the other squares as well before I actually end up adding these into my journal. And if I had to name one emotion that I'm experiencing around the holiday season, it's definitely gratitude. Gratitude to have some time for rest and personal reflection. Gratitude for getting to spend time with family. And I've been talking a lot about what I'm calling my 6 pillars of a radiant life. These are the 6 things that I think that we need, where we need to put time and attention to live a truly radiant, meaningful, and fulfilling life. And so I'm feeling gratitude for time for rest and reflection. These morning creative times are all about deep play. I'm getting to spend time with family, which meets my need for deep connection. Deep work, I'm looking forward to having some time over the next few days to really just sink into plans and dreams and ideas for the coming year. And deep experience is all about really feeling into the emotions that we're experiencing, noticing what is our language of human experience. And the more that we give voice to what it is that we're experiencing and what we want to experience, then I think the smoother that our life goes, the smoother that our life goes. And these are the 6 pillars that I'm taking, that I'm teaching as part of my Radiant Retreat. There are links in the comments or in the description section to focus in on that. And Blanca is saying that watercolor is fun to play with. At first, I couldn't find how to work with them. Yes, then just pushing onwards, they become fun. Emotions and happy mistakes. Amen, sister. Emotions and happy mistakes. And isn't that just the nature of life, right? How many synchronicities, coincidences, what feel like failures are really only happy mistakes and opportunities for growth and learning. Opportunities for growth and learning. See if I can finish this one off over here. Again, just coming in, sometimes with Zentangle patterns, just sometimes with marks and doodles. Just allowing myself to put more into this page, to have that sense of what are the emotions that I want to be blooming and growing? What are the emotions that I want to be blooming and growing? And I would say delight, feeling connection, connection to self, connection to spirit, connection to others. If I'm feeling sad, I want to feel all of that. If I'm feeling sad, I want to feel all of that. Which isn't always an easy thing to be in the experience of our emotions. And I could stay here all day in the play of this. And so what I'm probably going to do is carry these around along with my micron as I'm watching holiday movies. Christmas, we celebrate Christmas. I love Christmas. Watching movies or sitting around visiting with family. I love having something to keep my hands busy. It really helps me sit still. And the truth is that we carry our emotions with us wherever we go, maybe even if we're trying not to. And so I'm going to carry these emotions with me over the next little while and see just what exploration is going to unfold across the pages. It's hard to do grid patterns when my grids don't always come out. Here comes Diego this morning to say hello. You gonna come up and say hello? You're just coming to check me out. He's sitting at my feet. You can't see him, just staring at me. Oh, there he is. Now you can. They love to come stick their tails in my face. Silly cats. Sometimes it's fun having studio cats, and sometimes it's just a absolute pain in the patootie. I don't know what it is about the texture of the paintbrushes. They really love to chew on my paintbrushes, which annoys me to no end. I'm just creating a variation of Zeppel here, one of my favorite patterns. That was not a perfect grid for my Enzeppel, but it's close enough for the moment. And Diego has decided that it is crazy run around the house time like a madman. He's hilarious. So I have two rescue kitties. They're siblings, Diego Rivera and Georgia O'Keefe, that were part of a group of rescues that were all named after different artists. And I think they're about 3 years old now. And my husband said, we should get two, they'll entertain each other, which is true. They do entertain each other, but they're siblings. They also fight and wrestle and chase each other. And there's, twice as much to think about. So I've never had two at once before, so that's been kind of a fun journey. So again, loving where these going, and I also love the abstract nature of them. There's no up or down, right or wrong here. Trying to decide what else does it need, and it feels like it just needs a little extra darkness in here. Make some of these edges maybe stand out a little bit more. So what I love about art making is that it really does feel like it allows me to be in all 6 of these pillars at the same time. This is my work. It does feel like deep work, right? It is connection with myself. It's absolute glorious play. I'm experiencing a lot of emotions as I go along, and it's great time for reflection, and it can be very restful. A lot of times I might light a candle, just put on some meditation music and draw, and it just feels really beautiful. And Blanca is connecting with family this Christmas, preparations for making tamales. Oh my gosh, I will be right over. I love tamales. Having grown up in San Antonio, Texas, it was a Christmas Eve tradition. My family didn't make tamales, but we had a wonderful woman who we would get tamales from every year. And someone in the family would be there at 7 a.m. on Christmas Eve to go line up at her home to get tamales. So I love, Blanca, that your family is making tamales. It is definitely a labor of love. All right, just having these little pops of black in here that are just a little bit darker, just again, helps to bring the piece to life, right? Helps to bring the piece to life. Create a little more contrast, a little more visual interest. When I'm making art, I'm not consciously thinking about the principles of design. And then sometimes when I feel really stuck on a piece, I will just pause and say, okay, if I think about contrast, shape, color, what's missing here? What's missing here? In fact, I was flipping through one of my, here was my play that I did this morning, my crazy. This was done over a pre-painted page with just some gesso and then some acrylic inks. Have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but I had a lot of fun creating it. And when we think about what are the principles of design, they're balance, contrast. You hear me talking about contrast a lot. Emphasis, movement on the page. So how can a focal point guide our eye? Line, shape, color, pattern. That's what I love about Zentangle. It's a lot of repeating elements. But then also having negative space, areas that contain no design elements. And that one's always really hard for me because I love, right? I love adding pattern to every single area. So paying attention to the principles of design when you're feeling stuck. Like, don't go into a piece thinking, I'm going to include all the principles of design. You will absolutely drive yourself crazy. But to feel sometimes like I want to just go back and review and check that for a minute. So you can see I do have some negative space where there's no patterns. Even these have patterns in them just created by the color and the water. And so there's still a little bit of breathing space. And so now I can just spend some time deciding which way is up. And I'm kind of feeling like this feels a little bit like a tree, and I'm not really sure what's going on. And it's really calling me to come in and just put some little ennies in here, almost like maybe little fish leaping out of the water. And just that one little touch of movement across the page feels that page helps to balance out. There's a lot of busyness going on here. But I'm going to call this one complete for today, and I'm going to continue to work on these other ones over the next few days. But what I'm going to do, are these quite dry? I'm not sure they're quite dry, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and turn these two upside down, because if I have them going where I want them to go, yes, it does feel, doesn't it feel like joy? It definitely feels like joy. So this one feels maybe a little more like chaos and grief. This one feels a lot like growth and expansion. And this one feels like spaciousness and connection. For me, everything, there's a lot more connection happening in this one. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use some paper tape, which I love, which means I have to make some decisions before I tape them. I want them going that way because they're the same size. Notice I'm not picking ones where designs match up. I'm not worried about that. But I love this paper tape. Again, my friend Andrea has taught me so much about so many different art supplies and tools and how to use them, and paper tape has been one of my favorite. You can get it on Amazon or most art supplies, and literally you just get the back of it wet and it becomes adhesive. And so I know that I'm going to want to have these all flowing together which means I might come back and even create on the back sides of them. But in order to kind of show you where I'm going and what I'm thinking, let's see, these are all still a little bit damp, but that's okay. When I turn them upside down, let's see, where's my, I'm just going to dry some of that off because then I just get a different effect and I fade that out a little bit. This one ended up being busy and chaotic, but it's also super fun and playful. I really love it. Noticing my pages aren't trimmed. I just took a piece of watercolor paper and chopped it up so I didn't worry too much about size. So again, just this paper tape, the shiny side, you just add some water to the back of that. And it's okay if it's dirty water, like in my case. And got a little, tape was a little bit too long on there, so I'll trim that up. And let's see, where do we want this one to go? Oh, and they're so fun when you put them all together. It just makes me so happy to create this little unfolding booklet here, and maybe the back side of it is going to be more about journaling about what's appearing on each of these cards. And let's see. That one's still a little runny over there. That's okay. So turning your art around, looking at it from different directions also just gives you different perspective. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's going to go that way, and you'll know, right? So I kept turning it around and turning it around until I figured out exactly where I wanted that to go. It is looking happy. It's making me so happy. Blanca, I'm so appreciative of you being here and chatting with me. I know it's a busy week for people. Happy Hanukkah to all my friends that celebrate Hanukkah. Hanukkah started this week as well. So many amazing holidays around the world happening this time of year. So honoring and celebrating all of those. Christmas just happens to be the one that my family celebrates. So yes, right? So I've been through a lot this year, but at the end of the day, there is a lot of joy as well. A lot of joy as well. So I want that paper tape to get nice and dry. Sometimes I might put that tape on both sides, but I don't want to cover up any of my watercolor. So let's see what we can do here, because my pages aren't all exactly the same size. So I'm going to create sort of this unfolding emotional journey here, this unfolding emotional journey here. Grab my other journal. So I've got my end of year reflection journal that I've been working on. Definitely wanting to probably add something to the background, although I'm kind of liking it on the white. Maybe this page is going to get something else, and I can decide which way I want all of this to unfold. And so literally I would take that paper tape again, and I'm just going to create this beautiful piece that's going to completely unfold. Actually, if I do it this way, then I have kind of this secret unfolding space. So again, you're seeing in these videos how I work very intuitively. There's no pre-designed plan or no intention to teach this or do that, but just kind of that having fun with how is this all gonna unfold? How is this all gonna unfold? And I kind of like having it maybe a little hidden or secret in there, so when I come back and look through this journal later, I get this beautiful surprise. So that's one option. But I also kind of like having it, these are too big to fold that way. So I love the paper tape because it allows me to just really play with and I can have the whole book unfold. And then I can still see, so this would unfold all the way this way. All right, so I have some figuring out to do, but before I attach it into my book, I'm going to spend some more time adding patterns and designs, maybe even coming in with a little watercolor to add some shading in some, or some, not watercolor, some colored pencil. So I'm looking at maybe my little poke leaf here. You could just even darken up those greens just a little bit. You can hardly even see that I'm doing that on the camera. It's a very, very subtle. Or I might take, can I find a nice dark forest green? So I have a nice big bucket of Faber-Castell polychromos here that I love. And what if I want those sweeties to pop out even more? I can come in and use the colored pencils to add some shading over the top of all of this to just create, again, that little bit more dimension, contrast, and have those poke leaf just pop out a little bit more. I also might want to come in with a white gel pen, which I'm not seeing one here. So this one I left open, which the gel pen probably did not like very much. And what if I came in and added even a little bit of white here, just sort of mimicking that white spot that was already on the page. And it's amazing just coming in with black and white, what it is that we can create. I'm loving all these little water droplets in here. But what if I just added a little white outline to some of these lines in here? Again, this is just that mindful, deep play, just being in the experience on the page to see what it is that we can create. And this is one of those fun, playful processes that once I start, I find it really hard to stop. So I've added just little bits of white to a few different places on the page here, just to see what kind of different effect I could create. So I am going to stop here for today. Thank you so much for joining me as always. This is Dr. Minette Riordan, and this is Painting in Your PJs. I will be back tomorrow morning, Wednesday, December 21st, on the solstice. Tomorrow is the winter solstice at 7 a.m. Mountain Time, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, with a new prompt, a new page, and some more creative play to share with all of you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and Blanca, I so appreciate you. Thank you. I love that. Yes, connection through the magic of art, 100%. All right, have a great day. Bye-bye.